Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me. Let's talk chapters 6 and 7. Well, I say let's talk 6 and 7, but I am going to be starting at chapter 5 very briefly, thanks to Jesse. Thank you again for your questions, Jesse. And I will say, I, I I want more of them, Jesse, every time, and they're good. But Jesse is not the only one who is allowed to submit questions either. So if you have questions and you want me to take them up in the live stream, please put them in the book questions corner of Discord, or just in the comments on a YouTube video is fine too. But Jesse asked, I want to just take question one from Jesse's list here. Where did Mary get the key for the gate through the hedge? Does he just have it because he's a brandy buck, or did he have to go get it from somewhere? And if the latter, could he do that without raising suspicion? This is such a good question because questions like this make me question assumptions that I make in skimming through and reading the book. And you guys did. I mean, I had the exact same thought as Jesse, that there's a lock and a key, and he has a key. And then the responses started coming in. Well, who said there was a key? And I thought, well, that's silly. Someone's not reading closely. And I went back and looked, and key isn't mentioned, is it? So it could just be sort of a latch. I can't remember who posted a picture of sort of a gate latch. It was Toriel. Posted, yes, like sort of a latch bar kind of thing, and that could be called a lock, certainly. So it is a fair question, I would say. Is there even a lock on the gate at all? But I know a lot of people were talking about the passage specifically. I'm going to read it just quickly. So I'm talking about the tunnel. It was dark and damp. At the far end, it was closed by a gate of thick-set iron bars. Mary got down and unlocked the gate, and when they had all passed through, he pushed it to again. It shut with a clang, and the lock clicked. The sound was ominous. So it doesn't sound like he stooped over and fiddled with a lock, and the lock would click if it were just a latch bar. And what would the good of a lock be? And what's the point of this, I guess, is the question. What is the purpose of this gate? The high hay is there. The hedge is there because of the forest. It keeps the forest out of the Shire. There may be something coming from the forest too, but wolves and that sort of thing. I mean, it's unlikely. I mean, I think it was Mary dismisses the idea of there being, goblins or things like that there. So an iron bar gate with a latch would be enough, right? We're not talking about things with opposable thumbs. But I'll tell you the passage that made me think, and may still make me think, that there is a key. And then I'll get to Jesse's actual question. So going back to page 141 in chapter 5. Fredegar is objecting to going into the old forest. People don't go in there, he said. Oh, yes, they do, said Mary. The Brandybucks go in, occasionally when the fit takes them. We have a private entrance. That's what made me think that there must be a key. How can there be a private entrance for one family if it's just a latched gate? It's not a private entrance then. Anyone can go through. I mean, I guess maybe is it on Brandybuck land where trespassers can't go? I don't know about that. My thought is it probably does have a lock. And I would think that Master Mary, as the soon to be the old buck, would have a key of his own. So to Jesse's specific question, I don't think it's a problem. I don't think he needs to go borrow it from someone. I think he has a key because he is going to be the head of the Brandybuck family. Why shouldn't he have a key to their private entrance? Christy says, unless it's a private entrance that others don't know about. Yes, that is a good option, and it could be just that it's on Brandybuck land. It's not publicized. It's just an entrance that only the Brandybucks know about. Mind you, Frodo has been in there before when he was younger, so okay, they take guests, I guess. Um, Aiden asks, do we know that they went through the Brandybuck entrance? There might be an entrance off of a Brandybuck estate, like a back door. That again, that's one of those questions that makes me question my assumptions. Looking at it again. So Fredegar asks in chapter 6 at the beginning, how are you going to get through this? And Merry says, follow me and you will see. I have to assume that's the entrance that he's talking about, the private entrance. Again, Merry got down and unlocked the gate. I think you can read it either way, but I still think there's a key. Merry is unlocking the gate, not just lifting up the latch bar. Yeah. Yeah, I am unconvinced that there is no key, but again, great question and great responses to it, because I love thinking about things like that. We have a lot to get through tonight, so there was one other question of Jesse's that I wanted to talk about. I think it was about the drinks. Yes, how is it with the hobbits? What is it with the hobbits getting drinks that seem like water, etc., but somehow affect their psyche? Yeah, so we started with the mead from the elves. I say mead because it was a honey-scented beverage that seemed to intoxicate them in some way. I'm sure it wasn't mead. I'm sure the hobbits would have been able to identify mead. There was obviously some sort of magical property to it, in the sense that elves use the word magic. But there was that, and then of course there's this there's the water at Tom Bombadil's house, which goes to their heads like wine. I think that's the way that they phrased it, right? It went to their hearts like wine, maybe. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, doesn't matter. But yes, I know the one you mean. So I do kind of wonder about the elf one, and I don't really have a lot to say about that. And I'm not sure that I have any sort of parallel between the two. But the only thing I wanted to say about this was that it seems to me, and others have remarked on this before, this isn't original to me. My mom actually suggested this to me once, and it was a good thought, that Tom Bombadil and Goldberry are in a way, in their realm, like a pre-Lapsarian Adam and Eve in their garden, right? They are untroubled, untempted, sinless, and they are master. Well, Tom is master of the domain, and that parallel works for a while, and I haven't really worked through everything, all the implications of that, but one is that this does seem like a perfected form of alcohol, right? It's, the hobbits don't wake up hungover, they don't get, belligerent and stupid and silly drinking it. It's like our alcohol, or the hobbits' alcohol, is a fallen form of this is what alcohol was intended to be. And that's how I read the clear water-like liquid served at table in Tom and Goldberry's house. Oh yeah, one more thing on the latch and the key. Morgan asks, what does it mean by he got down? Was the latch low to the ground? And Aiden replies he was on a pony. I think that's true. Yes, that's probably true. That's probably what it means. It's probably not that he was stooping, but he got off his pony and unlocked it. I think that's right. Yeah, Christy says, well, being around forever gives you time to perfect the distilling process. Yes, that's true. And I mean, I have a 21-year-old bottle of scotch, and that's not cheap. But he could have some very old scotch. I think his collection might rival mine. Yes, yeah. Okay. Um, like I said, so there are two large close reading sections that I wanted to get to tonight. First was in the Old Forest, and I didn't even give this as an option because I wanted to do this, so I earmarked it for us to do, and then but then we'll also talk about Goldberry. Let's come back to her. But what I want to talk about is the I called it a chess match, or it's the forest playing chess and the hobbits playing checkers as I read it. And what I want to explore is the way in which the forest manipulates the hobbits and their responses to that, or their lack of response to it. Because close reading it as we're doing this time, I think it's interesting to see every step in the pattern, and what the trees are doing. And obviously we come to learn it's really Old Man Willow manipulating the trees and influencing them, and obviously directing the hobbits down to him. And I say there are 10 steps or thereabouts. I start off with okay, this one's tenuous, but I want your thoughts on it. And it's about, we're coming back to that lock in the gate. It shut with a clang, and the lock clicked. The sound was ominous. And then we come into, there, said Mary. You have left the Shire, and we are now outside and on the edge of the Old Forest. So there's a liminal space here where, they feel very keenly that they are no longer in the Shire proper. Well, I guess they weren't before, once they crossed the Brandywine, but anyway. They hear this lock click, and I'm stretching a bit, but it does seem very clear that the trees can influence sound. They can muffle it, right? And they do that to Frodo later. Could they not amplify sound? Could they not echo sound? I I wonder if if the trees are making the sound of that lock click as loud as they can and as ominous and echoey as they can, because this, like so many fight scenes in The Lord of the Rings, is a spiritual battle. This is a battle for will and heart. This is a battle between the hobbits and the forest for hope and despair. And I think throughout, the trees are going to be manipulating the hobbits' hope and despair. So, okay, am I starting on my strongest argument? No, but chronologically, it's the first one. I do kind of wonder if they're manipulating that sound a little bit. Aiden asks, "Is the forest close enough to the hedge to manipulate it?" Oh, I think so. I think the forest grows right up to the hedge. That was my read. Am I wrong on that? I think that they're very much in the forest once they cross the hedge. Once they're in the cutting underneath. I don't know why I think that. Hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, okay. I may be wrong on that. Tell me if I am. Okay, page 146, the next one. So, there was no sound except an occasional drip of moisture falling through the still leaves. For a moment, there was no whispering or movement among the branches, but they all got an uncomfortable feeling that they were being watched, with disapproval, deepening to dislike and even enmity. The feeling steadily grew until they found themselves looking up quickly or glancing back over their shoulders as if they expected a sudden blow. This is clearly... Okay, so now we're into it, right? Now the battle has begun. So this is the trees, through whatever malevolent force they can muster, making the hobbits uncomfortable and beginning to work on them. How do they react to that? Not great. Well, Pippin doesn't react well. He breaks, right? He gives in. Oi, oi! I'm not going to do anything. Just let me pass through, will you? Obviously, there's no... if you got him in a rational moment, there's no reason for him to do this, right? I don't think he thinks this should work. Why is he yelling at trees? He's never spoken to a tree before, I'm sure. But that he breaks, right? Already the Battle of the Wills is on and the hobbits are losing, or at least Pippin is. I also think it's worthwhile noting that for all of the leadership that other hobbits do later, Frodo and even Sam, Merry is the leader here. Merry knows the forest. He's obviously their guide, but emotionally, spiritually, he's their leader in this. It's worth noting. And he corrects Pippin, right? I should not shout if I were you, said Merry. It does more harm than good. And even Frodo is being affected at this point. He began to wonder if it were possible to find a way through, and if he had been right to make the others come into this abominable wood. So he's already questioning his decision-making, right? This is a spiritual battle that he is losing quickly. Later on that page, Merry gives a whistle. Well, well, he said, these trees do shift. There's the bonfire glade in front of us, or I hope so, but the path to it seems to have moved away. Okay. This, of all of the ones that I'm going to talk about, is the one that I have the most trouble with. And maybe we should come back to it after we're done, but I don't understand why the trees don't have a path to the bonfire, why they move the path to the bonfire glade. And if they don't have a path, then how do the hobbits get there? Like, this is chance, if chance you call it, right? So something is guiding them there, I should think. And it's not Merry, because he can't find the path. So I have to put a pin in this one unless someone has some thoughts. Just catch up on that. Okay, on the far side was a faint path leading up onto the floor of the forest, 100 yards and more beyond the hedge, Aidan says. Okay, so I guess they're 100 yards away from the old forest. Okay, so again, this is me being corrected in my assumption. Good. So maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe there is no amplification of the sound. Okay, good. Well, I think that conclusively disproven. Okay, so hang on to that, Jesse. This is what I think too. So I think the trees are guiding the hobbits there, maybe to remind them of what happened before. I think that the trees do want them to be in the bonfire glade. So why is there no path? That's what I can't figure out, because I'm with you there. I think that the trees do want them there. So why is there no path? Okay, let's get to the glade. The leaves were all thicker and greener about the edges of the glade, enclosing it with an almost solid wall. No tree grew there, only rough grass and many tall plants, stocky and faded hemlocks and wood parsley, fireweed seeding into fluffy ashes, and rampant nettles and thistles. A dreary place, but it seemed a charming and cheerful garden after the close forest. Look at these plants. These are not nice plants. These are angry plants, right? These are plants of vengeance. Hemlocks, wood parsley, fireweed, nettles, thistles. The trees are livid about the bonfire glade. Why are no trees? Trees would regrow where there's been a fire, right? That happens. But no tree will grow in here. They are not allowing trees to grow here. This is a memorial. This is an angry cemetery, and they are keeping it there to make sure that they always remember what the hobbits did to them. And I agree with Jesse. Why is there no path here if I think they want them to see this? And look at all these plants. Like, Sam would know these plants. Why do they all think this a cheerful and charming garden? Well, they think it that because after the close forest, it's nice to be out in the open, right? It's not so stuffy in here. They're not getting it. They're not seeing what the trees are doing. A good point by Paige. The ponies aren't deterred or not shown to be startled by anything. Yeah, that's a good point. Interesting. I don't think we see anything about that, right? So, yeah. Parmelk says the path moved to put them on edge, make them more ill at ease. This is a thing that should be here and isn't as it should. It's psychological warfare, going by the logic of they're being guided. I agree with that almost entirely. It just leaves the question of how did they get to the glade? Is Merry just that good a guide? It doesn't seem like he is later. Anna Catherine says maybe because the trees want them to arrive there on their terms. Yeah, and maybe sort of dovetailing with Parmelk's point there. Arrive there on their terms and ill at ease. They were herded there. I guess. Maybe the trees were just so close that it was the only direction they could go? Maybe. Okay, moving forward. I don't want to get bogged down on that. Okay. The hobbits felt encouraged by the bonfire glade, this terrifyingly awful bonfire glade, and looked up hopefully at the broadening daylight in the sky. At the far side of the glade, there was a break in the wall of trees and a clear path beyond it. They could see it running on into the wood, wide in places and open above, though every now and then the trees drew in and overshadowed it with their dark boughs. Okay, so they know the trees move. They have established that the trees move. They feel the dislike and the enmity? I cannot get that word. Of the trees. And yet, here's a path. Let's just take it. I don't know. They are not covering themselves in glory here. The trees are making a path for them. Therefore, the trees want them to go along this path. And the trees don't like them. Why are they following it? Okay. I think this is just their hope, right? This is their thinking, oh, well, this is a path so everything will work out fine. I think they're probably being willfully ignorant. After a while, the air began to get hot and stuffy. The trees drew close again on either side, and they could no longer see far ahead. Now, stronger than ever, they felt again the ill will of the wood pressing on them. Okay, so more oppression from the trees, right? Okay, yeah. Okay, Christy has articulated for me the best reason here to think that they could find the glade without a path. Christy says, I think the blade isn't that far out from the gate or hedge, so it's easier for Merry to find now since it's not too far in. And I think that would make sense because the reason the bonfire glade was created was for the hobbits who had cut back the forest as it was attacking the high hay to burn the trees that they cut down. And they wouldn't have dragged them miles in to the forest. Okay, I can buy that. Excuse me. Yeah, so So the trees are oppressing them again. Okay. But I think this is important. What happens now? What is the hobbit's reaction here? The last time this happened, Pippin yelled at them. This time, Frodo tries to sing a song to encourage them. That's, I think, the right reaction, right? That's if you were drawing it up, that's the way you want the party to behave, right? You want them bolstering spirits. You want them to keep their morale up. Frodo kind of sings a challenging song, which, well, obviously it doesn't work. And I'm not sure that's right the direction to go. I wouldn't necessarily go at the trees directly. I might try to bolster the spirits of your friends first, maybe help them think about something else. But I like the directionally, I think he's correct. I think in this battle of wills and hope and despair, keep the hope up. That's the play here. So he sings his song, but his voice sinks to a murmur. And even as he said the word fail, his voice faded into silence. The air seemed heavy and the making of words wearisome. Just behind them, a large branch fell from an old overhanging tree with a crash into the path. The trees seemed to close in before them. So the trees, we find out later, the trees, or at least Old Man Willow, can sing. I think that this is a counter song. I think that they are countering Frodo's song with magic of their own, with will of their own, and they win. Morgan is saying just the same thing. I kind of pictured one of those eerie lullabies from horror movies while Frodo is singing. Yeah. I think that's coming from the trees. Yeah, Jenny said they had no idea who or what they were dealing with, but they were learning. We all were. Yeah. I agree. I think that that's important to remember and to keep in the back of our mind. They've grown up at the knee of Bilbo and his adventure stories, so they're not as unchurched as he was. But there's a difference between theory and practice, and I don't think that they have any idea what they're doing or what they're dealing with. To your point. Okay. The Bald Hill. Okay, this is interesting. So, before that, Merry is again speaking cheerfully, and if he felt any great anxiety, he did not show it. Also, good leadership. Frodo was trying to buff their spirits. I think that if Merry is feeling anxiety, his masking of it is good. This is important. But the others did not answer. They were depressed. A heavy weight was now settling steadily on Frodo's heart, and he regretted now with every step forward that he had ever thought of challenging the menace of the trees. And he's going to think about proposing to go back. So he is losing this battle pretty hard. Now, the Bald Hill. There's a path making directly for this hill. Why? Why does the forest send them here? The trees send them here specifically, right? And it boosts their spirits, right? It's something different than all the trees, right? It's at least a change of pace, and they can get out from the closeness of the path and look around. On the face of it, that seems like counterintuitive from the forest, but I think that what we see from the top, what was it? They look around northward. The key line that I see here is they could see nothing that might be the line of the Great East Road for which they were making. They were on an island in a sea of trees, and the horizon was veiled. Okay. So the haze and the mist really obscure everything they can see from the top of the Bald Hill. And all they can see is forest. I think that this is intended to be demoralizing. I think that this is intended to be, look around you. We are everywhere. You will never get out, right? That's kind of the vibe that I get from it. And it's interesting because I don't feel like they take it that way either. Their obliviousness kind of cuts both ways. Because we don't get any indication that this makes them depressed. Yeah, Jesse is saying, and Castleville agrees, which I do as well. Feels like they were giving them hope and then crushing it later by moving them in the direction they want them to, making their triumph better. Yeah, they're playing a game here almost. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, they made up their minds to go on again, and there's another path on the other side of the hill. Imagine that. They had not followed it far before they became aware that it was bending steadily to the right. Okay, so again, there's a path. We know the trees move. You're taking the path anyway. All right. The path starts moving in the direction you don't want to go. All right. So I think they make a good decision here. After some discussion, they decided to leave this misleading path and strike northward. Good. Okay. It's a misleading path, right? The trees are trying to mislead you. Leave the path. Okay, the trees have a plan for that. That's fine. But I still think this is a good plan. It's the right move in this chess match. And then, of course, we get to the folds in the earth, and it funnels them all the way down to the Withywindle into Old Man River. But what are your thoughts on this chess match? Because I think, there was one last part that made me laugh. It's when they get down to the Withywindle. Right, that's what it was. So they find a path, a footpath winding along the side of the river. And Pippin says, I dare say, said Pippin, that is, if the track goes on so far, and does not simply lead us into a bog and leave us there. Who made the track, do you suppose, and why? I am sure it was not for our benefit. I am getting very suspicious of this forest and everything in it. Now you're getting suspicious, Pippin? Now? Of the forest and everything in it? So every other path you've been willing to follow, other than the very last one, even though you know the trees move and create paths and obscure them, but this footpath, this you're suspicious of, even though we find later it's the one thing that you shouldn't be suspicious of. I understand why. It just takes him so long to wise up to, well, now I'm getting suspicious. That made me laugh. Yeah. Christy says the trees are grandstanding. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right, Jesse. It's like giving the opponent a piece and then take their queen or something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, here's the bald hill. Here's a pawn. Oh, now I got your rook. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it is. It's like the horror movie where you're screaming for them to get out of the house, and they're just bumbling along. Okay. Well, that's yeah. Anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about with the Old Forest chapter. That's the one. I mean, the Old Man Willow part and meeting Tom Bombadil, of course. There's a lot of good stuff in here, but for me, the one that I had never really spent a lot of time with was the way the forest manipulated them from place to place, and the way that the hobbits were so oblivious to it throughout. And I think that the we're going to see a lot more spiritual warfare and hope and despair stuff, but I think it starts here. I think this is the germ of it. Lola says it's the kind of comment, Pippin's there, that seems ironic because it's so obvious it's just funny. You know, when you realize how deep in trouble you are, that you start laughing. Well, you know what? That's a good point, and that actually fits very well with Hobbit humor. So I may not be giving Pippin enough credit for self-awareness here. I'm beginning to be very suspicious of this forest. Yeah, I'll bet, eh? But you're probably right. He might be a little self-aware with that one. Yeah. Although I don't know if that's yeah. Is that Pippin's style? He, he lacks self-awareness sometimes, but anyway. Okay, Goldberry. I want to get to Goldberry. Okay. Let's grab my notes here. Morgan Louisa says, chuckles, I'm in danger. Yes, exactly. It's the Ralph Wiggum meme. I can picture it perfectly. All right. Goldberry. Fair young elf queen clad in living flowers. Do I start with the back? No, I'm not going to start with the backstory of Tom Bombadil. We can get to that if we have time. The question that we have been talking about is, what is Goldberry? Because the question that I often see debated is, what is Tom Bombadil, or who is Tom Bombadil? Is he a Maya? Is he a Luvatar in sort of clothed in human form or humanish form? And who is Goldberry is, at least I think there's an answer. And to me, it was a big revelation. And this is, again, not original to me. It's probably safest if you assume that if I have a revelation like this, it's not my original thought. I'll call it out. Don't worry, I'll brag if I have an original thought about something like this. But I want to walk through some of the evidence that we get, because I like most of the discussion board, most of the Discord server has been people saying that she's a dryad or a river nymph or something like that, and that has always been my assumption, right? She is the river daughter. She's the daughter of the river. What kind of daughter would a river have? A dryad, a river nymph, a river spirit, right? And I don't think that's correct, and I think we have enough evidence to say what she is. But let me walk through it. Okay, starting on page 160, the last two lines of Goldberry's song that they hear flowing down into the night from out the door. Reeds by the shady pool, lilies on the water, old Tom Bombadil and the river daughter. I don't know what reeds on the living pool mean. That's the one that gives me trouble. Okay, let's move back 2 more lines. Light on the budding leaf, dew on the feather, wind on the open hill, bells on the heather. Reeds by the shady pool, lilies on the water, old Tom Bombadil and the river daughter. It seems like she's juxtaposing 2 things, right? Or she's putting 2 things into pairs and concludes with old Tom Bombadil and the river daughter. It seems pretty clear to me that the first one, at least light on the budding hill and wind on the light on the budding leaf and wind on the open hill. These are big picture, elemental, movement oriented, outdoor things that strike very close to Tom Bombadil and his big brash character, right? Dew on the feather, bells on the heather, lilies on the water, and the river daughter. Those are all kind of placid. They're all smaller. They stay in one place. And I think that they come in pairs like that because the latter of the 2 refers to her. So it's that last one, reeds by the shady pool. I'm not sure how that relates to Tom Bombadil, and I may be totally wrong on all of this anyway. But let's come back to it because more evidence. Here's the hard evidence. What do we know? What does the text explicitly tell us about Goldberry? Daughter of the river woman, right? She is river woman's daughter. That's said a couple of times. What does she look like? Well, she has white arms, so I think we can assume white complexion, yellow hair, and a green gown. So green, white, and yellow, right? We know that Tom first met Goldberry sitting in the rushes of the pool where he gathers water lilies. And where do we see her first time? In a chair, at the far side of the room facing the outer door, sat a woman. Her long yellow hair rippled down her shoulders. Her gown was green, green as young reeds, shot with silver like beads of dew, and her belt was of gold, shaped like a chain of flag lilies, set with the pale blue eyes of forget-me-nots. About her feet, in wide vessels of green and brown earthenware, white water lilies were floating, so that she seemed to be enthroned in the midst of a pool. Okay. Oh, good night, Jen. All right. I'm going to post a picture, and I want you to tell me if I am wrong or not. Okay. Click that link and tell me, is that not Goldberry? Is Goldberry not a water lily spirit? Is she not the spirit of a water lily? I mean, she, he brings her water lilies every year, every day of the year when they are blossoming, right? She's surrounded by them. Is that not a family reunion? Is that not why she wants the water lilies there, or he wants to bring them to her? That's where she was sitting when he found her. Oh, Lola says that in her translation, this fragment of the song says that Goldberry's singing with Tom. Interesting. I think that was just... Not quite clear to me whether they're both singing together. She does say, "Let us sing together." So that may be true, Lola. Anyway, she's a water lily, right? Isn't that what she is? All like the coloring, the gold and the white and the long slender green reed. I mean, listen to, so again, reeds by the shady pool, lilies on the water, old Tom Bombadil and the river daughter. Now listen to Frodo's poem to her. "O slender as a willow wand, O clearer than clear water, O reed by the living pool, fair river daughter. O springtime and summertime and spring again after, O wind on the waterfall and the leaves' laughter." I think those first two lines, that describes a water lily, doesn't it? I don't know. When I heard this, I was like, it all fell into place for me. And I was gonna say I'm open to being told that I'm wrong. I'm really not. Please don't. If you have a better idea that proves me wrong, okay, tell me anyway. But I won't like it. But I think, like, until proven otherwise, the river daughter is a water lily, the daughter of the river, right? That's where I'm going with it. I'm sticking with that. It's a little bit like Little Prince's Rose, one of many but unique, says Lola. Yeah. Yeah. Now, what is Tom Bombadil? Probably don't have time for that tonight. So, okay, so here's why I am ambivalent about Tom Bombadil. I don't think he fits in this universe. I think the best answer, the most likely answer within Tolkien's universe that you can give is that he is a Maiar. But it doesn't perfectly fit, right? He was, what was it? Tom was when he tells them about his beginning. It's like he was in the world before Ea was created, or something like that. I can't remember exactly how he puts it. Sorry. Yeah, it's his eldest speech. Eldest, that's what I am. Mark my words, my friends. Tom was here before the river and the trees. Tom remembers the first raindrop and the first acorn. He made paths before the big people and saw the little people arriving. He was here before the kings and the graves and the Barrow-wights. When the elves passed westward, Tom was here already, before the seas were bent. He knew the dark under the stars when it was fearless, before the Dark Lord came from outside. Okay, we're getting into Silmarillion stuff here, which, you know, people reading Lord of the Rings for the first time or who haven't read the Silmarillion, none of this will make sense. All of this, except for the last line, makes sense if he's a Maya. But he knew the dark under the stars before it was fearless. Okay, he could still be a Maya then, but before the Dark Lord came from outside is capitalized, so the void. So he was here before. When did Melkor come down into Ea last of the Valar? Maybe so. Okay, so there's a chance. But anyway, it doesn't work perfectly. And I don't think it was intended to work perfectly. And the reason why I say that is because Tom Bombadil was a character in Tolkien's imagination far before he wrote Lord of the Rings. Tolkien wrote poetry about... he wrote a book of poetry about Tom Bombadil. The Adventures of Tom Bombadil is a book you can buy. It has nothing to do with hobbits or Middle-earth or anything. There's nothing to do with any of that. It was just a character that he created that... I think it was his daughter Patricia's doll had yellow boots and a blue coat, and they called him Tom Bombadil, so he wrote stories about it. Anyway, he wrote this, I don't know if it was before The Hobbit, but in any case before Lord of the Rings. And in the process of writing a sequel to The Hobbit, he was sketching out notes, and one of them was like, go into the forest, meet Tom and Goldberry. So he brought his manufactured character, Tom Bombadil, into this story that he was writing. So when he created Tom Bombadil, Tom was not a Maiar. Now, Tolkien can retcon. He's the king of retcon. So I think that's entirely possible. It's just an unsatisfactory answer, right? He has always had the feel to me. I like him as a character. He's fun. But he doesn't fit to me. He doesn't fit the world. It's always an imperfect fit to me because he wasn't created for the world, right? And I think that's the problem that I've always had with it. I can always tell, even before I understood, even before I read the Silmarillion, read History of Middle-earth, understood the process, whatever, I always felt like this is weird. He doesn't belong in the same world as all these other characters. And I guess if he is a Maya, that makes some sense. Even though there are other Maya that do seem to fit pretty well. So I'm catching up. Yeah, no, so Jesse's saying she would probably expand on her still being a nature spirit of some kind, like a descendant from water lilies or responsible for them. Yeah, totally. I think she is. Yeah, I mean, she is not physically a water lily. She's clearly spirit form, like in human form, kind of. Yes, like I totally agree. I didn't mean to suggest that she's just like an anthropomorphized water lily, but I think she's a nature spirit of water lilies, like a river spirit would be in the same way a nature spirit. Yeah. Lola said there is information that she was actually his wife based on Tolkien's poetry about Tom, but I haven't got to read it yet. Sorry, who? I'm catching up on the chat. Goldberry is Tom's wife, yes, but are you saying that Goldberry is based on Edith, Tolkien's wife? Sorry, clarify that for me. Um, Castleville. Melkor arrived twice. Did he arrive twice? I mean, he was jailed in Mandos for a few ages. And he showed up and then kind of left ish, but I don't think he came from outside the second time. I don't think he went back into the void. Did he? Jesse, she wanted to ask about before the sea was bent. Is that about the earth becoming round? So that when the sea was bent is another Silmarillion illusion, and it refers to when the straight road from Middle Earth to Valinor, on which you could sail, was removed from the Earth. So yes, the Earth was made round. That's what they're referring to. But the seas being bent specifically, yeah, refers to only elves being able to take the passage to Valinor now. Yeah. Rebecca asked, what if Goldberry is a Selkie? Tom brings her things that remember of the sea so that she doesn't long for it and try to leave him. So I don't know Selkie as a word, but I know this tradition that you're talking about. I've heard of this. That's a classic fairy trope, and maybe that maybe Selkies that I'm thinking of. I don't know that word specifically, but yes, that's a good thought. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I always think of him just trying to please his pretty lady. Um, I can't imagine Goldberry leaving Tom, but maybe I mean for sure Tolkien would be aware of that fairy tale tradition, right? So maybe he's winking at it. Yeah, Jenny, I don't dislike Tom. I don't. I just I feel like I should read The Adventures of Tom Bombadil. I feel like I would love it because he is fun. I just within the story, I'm just impatient to get past him. Uh, okay, Christy is giving a good explanation of Selkies. Good. I'm going to read up on that. That's interesting. Oh, capable of they're seal folk, capable of changing their seal to human form by shedding their skin. Cool. I like that. Lola says, I read about the poetry book about Tom Bombadil on a blog a while ago, and the person who read it was guessing that Goldberry was a Maya based on it and changes her form as a nature spirit. I think, yeah. So, nature spirit, dryad, river nymph, these are all terms that are not, as far as I'm aware, used in Tolkien's Legendarium. I don't think that I'm sure he was aware of these traditions. He was, I'm sure, thinking about them in a way. But yes, within his world, she must be a Maya. She would be, a Maya of Yavanna's or Niana's or something. Yavanna's most likely, right? Right, yeah. Um, Maybe Lorien's. I'm going to say Yavanna. Anyway, yes, she must be a Maya. If we're going to place her and Tom within the context, within the known Tolkien world, she would almost certainly be a Maya. There's no such thing. I mean, dryads, nature spirits, those are all within Tolkien's frame. Those are all the names that we have given to nature-y type Maya. Oh, Holly's here. Welcome. Uh, Yeah, I feel the same. Holly says she feels impatient in this part of the book. Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. It's fun, but I'm standing on the threshold, right? I'm standing on the precipice of just this breathless dive into the book, and I want to get it going. So I am really glad that this is forcing me to slow down, us going through it this way, because it is enriching this section of the book for me quite a bit. Going back to Old Man Willow, Rebecca says, I feel that the hobbits are at a moment of overcoming fear and the woods oppressing them. I feel that Tom creates a pocket of joy as well as exposition to the Willow Man. Yeah, yeah. I mean, he serves that function definitely from an outside frame. But yes, I mean, it is interesting. It's interesting, isn't it? That's the other thing. So, and we'll get to this in the next chapter. But it's interesting that Tom allows Old Man Willow to live, right? Tom Tom is good, obviously, right, within the frame of the story. Why does he not just kill Old Man Willow? I Why does he allow evil to exist? Why does he allow the old forest to be so malevolent and hateful? I guess it depends on how you characterize what should a good character do in that situation, right? Allow a malevolent, evil, black-hearted Willow to entrap innocent hobbits within the land which you control? I guess, I mean, it can't just be that he can't be bothered, right? That can't be the answer. Crazy singer girl. I don't think you've commented before. Welcome. She says that yeah, she's mentioning there are issues with the Selkie theory, and I agree that it's not a perfect one to one. But I think that we can see times where Tolkien is aware of a tradition and imports part of it, right? And that may well be here. I mean, the ring wraiths, spoiler alert, have a problem with crossing running water. Are they Draculas? No. Did Tolkien obviously like that part of the book and about vampires? Yes, obviously. We can, it's sort of, we can see allusions to things. It's just what do we do with that? Yeah, Lola says this part does feel like all slows down and suddenly we're in a different world, like hobbits are taken from their path into some different world with a different perspective. It is, it is. It's like crossing the boundary into fairy, right? This is the part of the book. Well, this and I guess Rivendell, but even somehow this even more than Rivendell feels like they have crossed the boundary into the fairy world, like all the fairy traditions, the fairy tales, the old stories, and even the part about it could have been they're listening to a story. It could have been one day or many days. That kind of time distortion. Yeah, I agree. They are in a different world here. Well, he's asking maybe Tom recognizes the need for a balance in good and bad, like how the light and dark sides of the Force are intertwined in Star Wars. That's possible. I don't see that a lot in Tolkien's world, which is why I'm kind of pushing back on that mentally. But I got to think on that. I don't think there is a. I mean, yeah. Go not to Star Wars for morality, for they will say both. I have no idea what they will say. They don't have any concept of morality. But I don't think that in Tolkien's world, balancing good and evil is the way to handle the universe. I think you need only good. That leaves us still with, why is Tom Bombadil allowing him to be there? I lean more toward, and again, I'm thinking ahead, but well, actually, no. I guess it was chapter 2, wasn't it? It was yeah, it was chapter 2. So many, be not so eager to deal out death and judgment. When Gandalf's words to Frodo about Gollum deserving death. Maybe Old Man Willow does deserve death, but many trees that died deserve life. Can Tom give it to them? Tom might be able to give it to them, but leave that aside for the moment. I think it's more, he still probably has hope for Old Man Willow. That would be my guess. Yeah, Christy says, I saw Tom and Goldberry as very nature in essence, so like nature, it can be loving and cruel, like hurricanes and rainbows. Maybe. Maybe. Okay, yeah, so Anna Catherine makes this point, and I did want to talk about this. She says, in the trees' minds, the hobbits are the evil ones, destroying the trees. And the point that I wanted to make on that is that it can be tempting to try to see things from the tree's view, and I get that. But the only point that I would make is that when we think about like the trees attacking the hedge and the hobbits vindictively burning them and whatnot, it's tempting to see the hobbits as marauding orcs, hacking, biting, burning, whatnot. But gardening, it's civilization in general, and a well-ordered farm and a garden and whatnot is a war against nature. Pulling weeds is killing a plant, right? If you want to be able to live in a society in a well-ordered shire, you're gonna have to kill some plants. So yes, I agree with you. From the tree's point of view, the hobbits are evil. But I resist the temptation to go too far with it, right? I not that you are, but I think there's a lot of daylight between hobbits and orcs here, even with the bonfire glade in existence. Well, the chat has moved far ahead of where I am, and I'm not going to be able to catch up here. So I'm going to read through this and maybe move to Discord on some of the meatier questions here, and I'll wrap this up. So join me on Discord, and thank you for joining me tonight. This was fun as always, and yeah, we're gonna do for Sunday. We're gonna do 2 more chapters. These are long ones, so give me your feedback on, doing 2 a week for the last little while has been fine, I think, because they're shorter chapters. If 2 a week for this one is too ambitious, let me know. We'll sort of take a straw poll, but I think this has been good so far, and ideally we'll keep doing 2 a week, at least up until the chapter of the Council of Elrond. But thank you for coming, everyone. Have a good night, and we'll talk to you soon.